This miniature was first primed in Vallejo's matte black primer and then fully base coated with Molotov's Liquid Chrome. The Liquid Chrome takes some getting used to in order to apply it properly, but I'll cover that later on in this video. For now, I follow the same approach I used in my previous Necron videos and start with a base coat of thin Tachyon navy speed paint, applying it carefully to all of the areas that would be a darker metal. I take my time to minimize accidentally overbrushing onto areas that I do not want this color. Once the first application of Tachyon Navy is fully dried, I apply it a second time, though only to the recesses and lower parts to create shadows. For the coppery metals, it's much the same, taking my time to apply speed paints to minimize any cleanup needed on areas that I want to leave unpainted. Getting this orange on the Tachyon Navy isn't a big deal as it doesn't really override it, and it's also why I chose the order I'm applying these colors in. But still, there will be mistakes, and this helps me reduce extra time wiping away speed paint before it dries or to rebase coat the metallic areas to remove unwanted spots. Once the second coat is fully dried, I thin bright red and do a much smaller application, only where I want the copper metals the darkest. The gold metals are done over 3 applications like the copper metals beforehand, though all using a thinned bony matter as a color of choice. For the cables, these things are all over the place between the different Necron models I've painted, and none of them are repeated from video to video. This one is the best one I've done for them thus far. I start with a base coat of shamrock green speed paint, and then like the other areas painted on this model, once that first coat is dry, I add another to help create some darker shadows. While the green dries, I mix some Mr. Weathering solvent and multi-black and test it on the back of my hand. It spreads well, but if it stains my entire wrinkly knuckle like this, it means I need to add a little more solvent so that it flows better into the recesses and not across my entire geezery hands. Once I have it thinned properly, I begin pinwashing it across the miniature and, wow, I didn't realize the synthetic brush is in this bad a shape. It's time to toss it into the junk pile and get a new one for actual applications. In this case, it didn't make much difference though, as you only have to be mildly accurate, as this stuff takes care of half of the job for you. I gently tap the brush to anywhere I want to better define the recesses or edges and avoid anything painted green until last to allow it some time to dry. After the pin wash is dry, I come back with a metallic silver to edge highlight everything that's been painted up to this point, except for the green cables. This is the second longest time I spend on this miniature, being beaten only by the glazing I did on the blade. In the other Necron videos, I use Vallejo metallics for this, but those are very runny and hard for me to control, so I tried using Army Painter's Shining Silver, which I control marginally better. That tells me the problem isn't the paint, but me. I just need to get better. Here I'm still not happy with the cables, so I add some more shadows using a darker green speed paint. I then get ready to tackle the glowing bits, but first I need to go back to the liquid chrome I used to base coat the miniature to fix any overbrushing. Somewhere near the beginning of the video I mentioned that I had some trouble with this stuff, so let's talk about what I learned. First, as you eagle-eyed folks may have already noticed, I used an airbrush to apply the liquid chrome, as why else would I applied it to the base? Yes, I know the image for this video said no airbrushing, and in fact in this case using a brush was superior for this than when I used the airbrush. Take a look at the parts left unpainted, specifically the blade. See how shiny and reflective it is? Well, it's not compared to what it can be. We'll take a quick detour to demonstrate what I mean. The left video is a result of liquid chrome from an airbrush. Look at the blade specifically. The right video was after applying more liquid chrome to the blade using a brush. The brush application was far superior than what I got from an airbrush. Now to be clear, I'm not saying you can't get this result with an airbrush. That's something I need to figure out. The issue for me so far was applying the stuff with the brush got the best result, but not at first. Look at what's happening here. It's going on sticky and gunky and leaving little streaks. And that's not how reflective things work. They have a smooth surface, which is why gloss varnish works the way it does. It helps fill those tiny scratches and recesses, giving a bigger smooth surface to reflect light with. I know this stuff can be crazy reflective because I saw Marco Frazzoni use it with wondrous results. And after about 30 minutes of fiddling around, I finally figured out how to get a good smooth application, which boils down to put it on thicker and only do it in stippling or dabbling motions, no actual brush strokes. If you put this on fast enough and thick enough, it'll level itself out and fill its own gaps, and the difference is staggering in just a couple of seconds. Now, with that learning experience thoroughly shared, let's return back to the green glow. I test some speed paints over the chrome and settle on Ghillie Dew to start with, which looks really nice over the chrome. I apply this Ghillie Dew over all the areas that will glow sans the blades. This ultimately gets completely covered up later on this miniature, but it gives me some ideas for something else I'll paint in the near future. And here's one last look at it before I start making these changes. The first change is some more Ghillie Dew around the edges of everything glowing to add some less bright areas. That gets followed up by another, but this time unthinned application of Ghillie Dew to make it even darker. And sorry, I must have knocked the camera off center here or something. I'm not sure why it's so far off in these shots. At some point I get positioned correctly and I add another application of liquid chrome to the center of the glowing areas with the idea that it would help create a lighter spot, which it actually did. While that chrome was drying, I finish off the green cables by adding a final highlight. With the chrome dry, I add some jungle green, which is pretty thin, to all the glowing areas. This is what ultimately hid all of the chrome. I think if I thinned the jungle green down with some speed paint medium or glaze medium and built it up thinner and slower, I could have gotten a better result. At this point I didn't hate the glow even though it wasn't what I had in mind. I took some notes on what to try different in the future and it's time to move on. This isn't a miniature I plan on entering in some kind of painting competition, so with a few more minor steps I can get this to where I'm happy enough. I drop some gloss varnish on all the glowing bits to give it a little more shininess, and then I add a final highlight in the center and edges using Poisonous Cloud. This is a lighter green than I used for any of the other Necron models I painted, so this will make his glow a little brighter because I guess his batteries run on a higher voltage. For the blade, I didn't show those steps here, but you can check out my Scorpec Destroyers video on how I did this, as I followed the exact same steps with no deviation. My hope was that the chrome would shine through some, but the glazes ultimately covered all of the chrome completely. And this is the end result. Despite not figuring out how to properly apply Molotov's Liquid Chrome until 3/4 of the way through this miniature, you can tell how reflective it could be. Having thinned the speed paint so much, it still allows much of it to shine through. It's a very nice finish, being reflective while not being glossy at all. I have many ideas to try with the liquid chrome for future miniatures. For the pros from this project, there is the aforementioned reflective but not glossy finish, and I especially like the face. There's something about those three colors together concerning the white, orange, and khaki. I think this could make a nice color scheme for a medieval knight with a tabard. For lessons learned, I have to be careful with the chrome when applying it, regardless of through an airbrush or with a brush, due to needing a relatively thick application to truly get the extremely mirror-like reflections. There are some areas, such as the two flowing tassel things coming off his shoulders, where it was too thick and completely filled in some of these recesses. I had to paint these recesses back in with thin black paint so it appears that they're still there. I also really need to take more time and practice highlighting with metallic paints. As a final note, I'm happy with the completion of this model as it means I've finished all of the Necrons from the Command Edition box set, and with the inclusion of the Canoptic Doomstalker that I threw in separately, this gives me the equivalent of having a complete full Necron combat patrol. I also learned a good deal from experimenting on this miniature and have new ideas to try. And that'll bring this video to its end. I hope you learned something or were inspired to start or expand your own Necron dynasty, or to even experiment with Molotov's Liquid Chrome. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if you like the content of this video and would like to see more, you can easily support this channel by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I bid you a fond farewell. Until the next video.